Hello and welcome to Jamp's webinar, Unlayering Digital Equity, Empowering More Students with iPad. My name is Dave Saltmarsh. I'm Jamp's educational evangelist. And I joined Jamp about 4 years ago in this quest by Jamf to continue supporting not only education, but the EdTech world and the use of Jamp and getting our story out. I'll be joined today by Kelly Watkins-Conrad, a senior technical account manager, or correction, as of this week. Kelly is now a systems engineer here at Jamp. So welcome, Kelly.
Thank you.
I'm glad to have her with me. Today she'll mostly be watching along for questions as they come and jumping in at the end to respond to any of the technical type of questions that some of you might have. We're also joined today by Vicki Lyons. Vicki is the technical service manager at the school district of Crosse in Wisconsin. She's an Apple Distinguished Educator. She's also one of the people that have the CETL, or the Certified Educational Technology Leader certification from Crosse, the Consortium of School Networking. That certification really sets Vicki up as an expert in all things technology, but understanding that Crosse's framework that certification shows that she has the skills at includes things like leadership and vision, understanding the educational environment, and managing technology and support services. So it really crosses the gamut of both IT needs and EdTech needs within an organization. Welcome, Vicki. Great.
Thank you, Dave.
We're going to go ahead and get started with some of the information. And you may know Jamf as that organization that's out there helping other organizations succeed with Apple. We've been dedicated to the educational arena for 15 years. It's where we got started, and we aren't stopping. Certainly we have a lot of commercial customers, but it really isn't our DNA, and it's our intention to continue supporting not only the IT people out there, but the EdTech group that is so involved, particularly in iPad management. We're looking to help people enable a transformation that includes instructional practices, student experience. What we're going to talk deeply today about the layers of equity. We also recognize that there's this long-term sustainability that's vital to districts. And supporting the non-IT crowd or the EdTech group is really primary at being able to sustain a program. So we're going to talk about, and we support simplified workflows, and we also want to help people along that path as they expand usage of device management. Jamf itself, like I said, been around for 15 years. We're right about 4,000 K-12 organizations today, over 1,000 universities, and well over 3 million students being supported. One of the things I'm really proud of that will lean into the conversation, this is where I'm going to get off of Jamp and get into the conversation, but 4 years ago when we introduced Casper Focus as a tool for teachers to manage iPads, that stretched our support from the IT team and the EdTech team using our product to into the hands of teachers, which we really thought would help improve students' experience. We're thrilled that Apple has taken that and turned it into their own with Apple Classroom. We're also proud of our collaboration with Apple in their Connect Ed project. Being in 112 of their 114 schools is something we're really happy about because we know that we're helping the most needed schools in the nation with providing equity to their students. Let me go into our agenda. I'm going to spend a little time covering some of the background of digital equity, the digital equity layers. We're going to hand things off to Vicki to highlight what's going on in La Crosse. We're also going to end and wrap it up with a little bit of where's the potential influence you can see in Jamp Pro to help an organization really focused on digital equity. One of the first places to start is sharing the resources that we use. Jamf is a proud corporate sponsor of an organization called Crosse, Consortium of School Networking. They've been around for years supporting schools with many types of resources, but one that's of particular interest to us is their Digital Action Agenda initiative. It includes an infographic and toolkit on digital equity. It's a great resource. They really get into how to survey the community that involves students. So they have examples of surveys that you can send out to students and parents, along with advice on how to bring in partners within the local businesses and community and different community programs. So it's a great resource. I'm going to suggest that you consider going out there. If you're not already a COSIN member, go in and take a look at some of their great resources. It's where we get some of our information, some of the information we're going to cover today. A little bit of the data behind this topic. When only 25% of the schools surveyed anyways, and would like to think that's a good cross group from the United States, when only 25% really have an action plan for how to support students outside of school, we really need to think about elevating this topic. When 5 million households don't have access to high-speed internet, and I know there's a lot of initiatives to try to expand access. Thing is, having been doing this for years, since the 90s, this is always a topic. And even in 3 years from now, it's still going to be a topic. How many students don't have good quality access to internet? And so having a plan is really crucial. When we know that 50% of the students reported being unable to do their homework because either not good quality access to a computer or internet, we need to elevate this topic. And that information is provided through COSIN, through the Pew Research Center from 2014. And this data supports the notion that digital equity should be a driving factor in the decision to choose educational technology and choosing certain initiatives. Price matters, ease of use matters, but certainly the quality of that experience should be really high up on that list of needs. So let's go into some of the layers that has been identified by COSIN and other organizations. We'll start, though, saying that we know schools are the primary focus point and have been for years. Schools want to provide each student with access to transformational learning experiences. We know that they have to provide good quality internet across their building with no pockets. We want to have across the school great access to the internet with quality bandwidth. We know that we want devices that support today's type of innovative learning and technology. And having just gone to a couple conferences and seen so many things going on, like the STEM projects that are out there, the robotics and the coding programs, all of these programs are fantastic. But the technology utilized and how a teacher can, this last piece, make that environment really enriching is very important. A lot of schools are doing this today. I don't think it's a major leap to say that we also need to be thinking of these same things when we go home. I mentioned it in the previous data, the access to the internet at home. Supplementary technology that's innovative is crucial. I was reading a white paper from a school that was using another technology, and their very first, proud concept that they threw out there was that 60% of their students, the device they were sending home with them was their primary device. And that's a great notion on its own, and it's great that they're improving. But that meant 40% of the students weren't using that device as their primary device when they went home. That's because they had other technology available to them. And honestly, for me, if you look at it like that, if you were to stop at that layer of saying, well, we're sending devices home, then you realize that that's, in a way, just continuing the inequity that's out there. Students that have enriching experiences and don't use that device are getting a different kind of personalized learning. So it's an important layer to look at. Another layer identified is what's outside of the school, in the community. And this includes extending access of services, whether it's in local community centers or churches or stores where people go or gathering places. And then what is the quality of that access? From one community to the next, it could be drastically different. And then that enriching experience piece really comes into play. Realizing that it's an interdependent relationship. Because as students move around and they go out in the community, and like I said, where there's libraries or stores or churches, or an extended family's home, grandparents' home. Maybe there's parents and they spend time between two households. What's the quality of access and experience for all your students? Not just 60% of them. Can we make that quality much larger, make that gap smaller? I think those are some of the layers that might jump out at some people, the idea of what's at home and then what's in the community. We also want to look at What are some of the things in sustainability and scalability that are so important to a program if you're going to succeed beyond year 2 or year 3? Suggested as a thing that's sometimes underestimated is this access to hardware and connectivity is one thing, but what about the good quality service from technology that is service-focused versus fixing things and troubleshooting? But an IT department that's really there to be on the spot and help people at a moment's notice, like learning is. Also, looking at the skills of educators and ICT and a global perspective of information and communication technology, the skills need to be looked at beyond our early adopters. So often you go to a conference and you see somebody and it's that early adopter saying what amazing things they're doing and 2 or 3 of their colleagues are doing. And when I left my classroom, it was to support, to an extent, all the teachers. I needed to know that any classroom of second graders was getting quality access to integrating the technology across my schools and across every classroom, not just pockets. The other piece is you can't underestimate the potential political resistance to change, and you need to take steps towards that. And it's all about gradual progress, really, about setting expectations up front. And this is a big piece to ensuring equity of it's not just that device you give them. Are you solving these things within all the schools across a district? And lastly, for me anyways, on this layers, I want to bring up the notion that we look beyond that device. Multi-level exploration beyond the computers, it's about the use of the computers. You may have devices in every classroom. You may have devices going home. But what kind of activities? And this has been an emphasis of mine since the early mid-2000s and being in Maine since 2001 and having one-to-one with the MLTI project. We really had an opportunity to dive into this years ago and set an expectation. The same things for the levels of teachers, their effectiveness and instructional practices. And it isn't to point a negative thing about instructional practices, it's that we are always learning and trying to get better. As an educator, that was a constant. No matter how great the lesson goes, how well I do in this presentation, I'm going to go back and look to see where I said and ah. I'm going to look to be better and try to purposely improve. And we want to have plans for a measured expectations with measurable progress on this. And that goes for the potential of students and their experience, their transformational experience with technology. It isn't just meeting their needs of today and the lessons, because we have no idea where they're going to go. VR or virtual reality is great today. We have the coding, we have things where robotic and maker spaces. But in a year from now, will the technology be able to take on the new aspects that are there? It's around that concept. And it was a key thing back in my district before 2010, and then 2010 when I first left my district and I went to Texas Instruments and now with Jamf. On my list to when I interviewed school districts around the globe, and especially school districts are doing great things, towards the end I would get into, do you have any type of model of evaluation? And in 2010 and 11, I didn't hear a lot of great responses. Today, thanks to Ruben Puntadora's SAMR model, we know that we can look at how technology is being used from a different lens. You may be using the lens I used in the 2000s of Lodi, or you might be using the TIMS example. Regardless, we want to look at technology use from a low entry level of communication collaboration to that redefinition, the critical thinking and project things that are driving students and teachers to reach higher. And that really hits that last layer I was talking about of how people are using it. Do you have a plan for how you evaluate continual progress? At this point, I'd like to pause, hand things over to Vicki, and let her tell us a little bit of what's going on in Crosse.
Thank you, Dave. Hello to everyone, and I hope that this webinar will give you some ideas. And note that we're all in this together. And of course, the things that we've done in Crosse are able to be done everywhere. There's nothing really unique that we've done here. It's just that we have a consensus with our leadership both our curricular leadership as well as our principal leadership in where we're going. And I think that that consensus and vision, that collective vision, even when we have change in leadership, has sustained us for the last 5 years. So our school district currently has about 9,000 devices. We have 6,800 kids and about 1,000 staff members. And when we started on the road to moving away from a shared environment to one-to-one, we have ended up this year with a 5-12 one-to-one in our schools, with, of course, shared labs and shared equipment at our elementary level, as well as those items in our high schools. Lastly, our administration, including our principals and the rest of our administration, carries the same one-to-one environment. And I think that that's a real key to this. In changing your culture, it is necessary that people model what they're asking classroom teachers to do in that classroom. So some do it better than others, like all of us, but for sure they're all using it. So that gives you kind of an idea of what our logistical environment looks like. So let's talk about why we did what we did. We have a city of about 50,000 people here. Our economic status is like lots of other cities. I mean, we're in western Wisconsin along the Mississippi, and we have a changing demographic of people moving in, multicultural, as well as socioeconomic, and we wanted to make sure that we addressed that. And so as we looked at our technology needs, we really focused on the idea of equity. And for us, equity means that we're going to have a flexible environment that really allows teachers and students to use what they need to do to make things right for them. And we tried the piece of shared devices. We tried the piece of, let's bring in unlike devices, and none of that worked. What really has worked is having one common platform, and in our case, that is the iPad 5.8 and then MacBook Air 912. What that's given our teachers is the ability to really be able to progress and start where they are with the use of technology, but knowing that the tools they have in their hands are very powerful. So as they progress in their instructional strategies and their change, they have what they need at their fingertips to make that change, and they're not limited because of an internet access or because of something like that. We have no additional technology support that has been put into place. We have the same number of people. We moved from about 4,500 devices to over 9,000. And the one reason that we could do that and manage it, of course, is because of Jamp. That management tool giving us that flexibility is very necessary. But because of that, we are able to allow teachers and students to do what they need to do, and we in technology support change based on what they need. So let's go on to talk a little bit about why we chose the iPad. And we really wanted to be able to, like I said, have something that could grow with the changes that people were making in the classroom. And we've seen that. We've moved from, the idea of an app for app's sake. We do very little of that here. We've moved very strongly into productivity apps. In fact, in our SelfService and Jamf, we have an area that is just anchor tools, and those are just productivity apps that we encourage people to use rather than using specialty apps for certain things. The rest of them are available to them when they want to use them, and they can go in and access them and load them and uninstall them, whatever they need. But we really want to focus on the things that support good instruction. And we do that by moving along that continuum of face-to-face instructor to student empowerment. And that's where we're kind of going with what we need to do. So we involve our staff in a lot of these decisions. And with a district technology committee that helps give us the pulse of what's going on in our buildings, that structure also helps us make sure that we aren't getting myopic in what we're doing. We have a very strong need to be sure that our use of community dollars is spent well. Our taxpayers watch us very closely, so we want to make sure that we do that well. So that's really kind of where we were with that iPad. And The reason we selected it, honestly, because of our equity work, was we knew that 30% at least of our students did not have access at home. And so the ability to work offline, whether it's on that productivity apps or it is the actual documents and resources we provide to them through self-service, gives every kid an equal playing field. And we want to make sure that that happens. We are continuing to work with our community to bring in community-wide resources for internet access, as well as working with our local foundation to provide mobile access at home. However, I think it's really important to understand also that we don't have unlimited resources for internet bandwidth either. So with these 9,000 devices accessing our internal internet, we haven't maxed more than a 600 meg connection of our 1 gig connection. And that's because kids are able to work offline most of the time. And that's very, very helpful. So I think the combination of what we have, we can move on to the next slide. I think the combination of what we have is that the Jamf environment provides us the ability to give flexibility to that voice and choice that we really believe in. And it's really practiced here, and it's practiced across the board. It is not a pocket of innovation in La Crosse. I will tell you that we have different levels of usage, but across the board, all of our leadership believes in what we are doing. Our IT staff is doing none of the same things they did 4 or 5 years ago. We have very little break fix. We contract out with a local company to provide repair services, but most importantly, they are spending the time now more working one-on-one with staff in a way, really getting them to use the technology better, as well as making sure we keep things managed in the background for them to work with. Our Jamp environment, our self-service, like I said, is allocated out to different categories of people. So we believe that we have a need to provide some unique things to kids who need them, and Jamf allows us to do that based on device management, so that we're able to give kids who have special IEP needs, we can just purchase 1 or 2 of a high-end app and provide that to those devices, as well as be able to do some grade level things and to do some things specially for teachers. We're very excited about the area where we have for iBooks and EPUBs and those kinds of things, because as we move forward with Apple School Manager, we're able to start thinking about how to redesign that area to really serve subject areas and be able to deploy our own created iBooks and other things out through this environment. We are doing a couple things working forward with Jamf. One is to give our principals access to JSS to be able to do some of the things that only we can do now, namely being able to lock a device if a kid loses it, be able to do a fine, be able to do some of those basic things. So we're working through the security levels and that access to give them that power. They're very excited about that because they can do their work so much faster if we're able to do that. And secondly, finishing our Apple School Manager connection, which gives us the ability to really integrate classes and courses and teachers and students together to manage all of those resources in the background. So we have a nice marriage here, and we're going to keep growing that.
Oh, Vicki, that's fantastic. And I have to say, your leadership in the COSIN organization, from your roles on the board and all the committees. I mean, when I talk about that content that COSIN put out, and that first part that I put on was really inspired from hearing you talk to those levels. I know I put them on the slides and I presented it, but so much of that is what I've heard from you, that potential power that we have an opportunity. So thank you very much, and we'll see what kind of questions we get in a few minutes. But right now, and I brought up the slide of the SAMR just to put that back into your head, because you've heard, the layers in the beginning. You've heard what Vicki said they've done and their progress and their continued progress. I want to put that thought back in your head that to really support this equity, we have to think sort of like SAMR above that line. And so in that respect, if you look at what Jamp is hoping to do to help organizations succeed with Apple, we, like many other device management solutions you have, focus first on that implementation. And Apple has made it so that really implementation is easy. When you hear people say like, it's easy to manage, a lot of that comes from the advancements Apple has put in. So purchasing and provisioning, getting devices from the moment they're purchased and from a back end ready so they can be taken out of a box and powered on and come up the way a school district wants them to, that's an expectation when you hear people say easy to use. That is certainly right there, and it's right there before you deploy the devices. So now, of course, you want to get them out. And at this level, if I said this was below the line, this is pretty basic implementation. Basic things you want to be able to do that do support equity in helping people roll out their programs. Thing for me is we want to go above that. And maybe that's just where some people are at. But we want to know that there's the potential for this idea of mass customization. And I don't mean that as an oxymoron. It is mass customization. Personalizing one student's environment, but being able to do that at large scale. And that's great initially. Think about how we used to set things up and get them up and running. But Vicki talked about the needs of a special ed student or just the needs of a regular ed student. We have the potential today of that refinement, that dynamic, agile approach to meeting the needs of a student. And Vicki mentioned handing some things off to a building principal. And I'm going to talk to that level of if an EdTech is using our product, a student's access to content can change instantaneously as needed. We even have an integration with eSpark, which is a company that is tied to assessments that can through our product, deploy apps to a student who's just passed some tests, and they have certain apps to help them build the next skills. And then once they've mastered those apps are retracted and different apps are sent down. So there's some amazing things for this refinement. But on a day-to-day basis, on a manual capability, imagine someone in a library or a department head making an adjustment to a student's environment based on the request of a teacher, or the mastering something on a digital citizenship. This is where we're able to transform that environment as it goes out of school, that it can be an environment that is really transforming the way people have done things instead of this mass settings for everybody. And we want to be at that level where we're helping people move up to that higher level, sort of similar to the SAMR concept, but those should be your expectations. We know it is of our customers. In a recent survey, and we had 600-something respondents, we knew that 40-something% are involving, like Vicki, people outside of the IT department in the day-to-day management of iPads. Some are doing a lot, but that's a significant number. The other side of that is we know that even Jamp Pro is in the hands of EdTechs out there. We provided Casper Focus, and now there's Apple Classroom, and so there's lots of teachers doing some management right in their environment. But we know that there are dozens of roles in an organization, and what I like to think of is, Jamf has been so dedicated to the EdTech and the IT world that we are right there at the needs of people who are looking to hand the librarian the access to deploy an app because a student just earned some privileges. Changing something in self-service because a student earned privileges in a digital citizenship. A building principal being able to modify privileges or restrictions based on a student's academic or behavior in a classroom, academic performance. So those are the capabilities we have. For those that are in IT, we want you to know that this goes beyond lip service of these people have this. We've built things into our product to support this notion. Sites, for instance, allow someone to manage all of the devices across a district, or limit it just down to one building, like a high school or an elementary school. We also have the potential to give access, different kind of access to different roles that end up empowering the end user that can apply and remove restrictions, can change security, and being able to enable loss mode, for instance, that Apple has provided is a great thing to be able to do outside of the IT department. And for those IT people, again, we want to mitigate any concerns of sharing access. If you look at different systems, you may only be allowed to have so many people log in. There's concerns of overlapping responsibilities. But because we can mitigate that with either limiting capabilities to not having delete or not being able to create and tagging it down to specific tasks. If we can nano the needs of somebody that can support a student, and they can still have a great environment, because part of equity is also in making sure devices stay in students' hands. If we can limit access but not take a device away, that's supporting a student to be successful. We want to make sure that they're successful in school and out of school and when they're out there in the community. And of course, that can be done by just about any device, so it isn't a matter of IT having to only have access. We can have access across Apple's platform, and even because it's web browser, you could use another type of device. We also support, as Vicki mentioned, she talked about her self-service concept. Giving users access to things enables them and inspires them. And that's a spark, a key piece. If you look at that digital equity, moving beyond the device to how are people using it? Are they using it to foster imagination and creativity and spark and support critical thinking? That's an element that we really want to make sure our conversation's at. Not back at the level of ease of deployment and implementing. We want to get to this conversation. What's happening in your self-service portal, like Vicki said? To support you, lots of resources from our last JNUC session. We've got videos online of customers that are going through this process. Vicki's in one of these videos sharing her story. We have how to bring IT departments, IT, systems IT and EdTech together. Hey, we have people that you can chat with. But honestly, the best place you can go if you're, talking about even non-IT issues, more EdTech issues, consider going to Jamf Nation. As a matter of fact, my friends at Jamf Nation just helped us with putting a new tag in there called EdTech. So now if you were putting a topic or a question, and I'm trying to inspire some people that might not think they would go to Jamf Nation because they're not technical, to go to Jamf Nation and talk to our 40,000 people there about what they're doing, like Vicki's doing, for equity, for deploying apps, giving access to EdTech people versus systems IT. Because I heard at TCEA, I had some of the largest districts in Texas telling me how they totally have handed things off with mitigating any concerns to the EdTech teams. They're the ones managing the devices and helping to make sure that equity happens right down at every student's level. And lastly, I want to remind you that if we touched on something and you came here for something else than what we provided, we have so many webinars available to you. Vicki, I'm going to ask you to come back on and just be ready for when we get questions. But I absolutely want to start by saying thank you to you. You've been an inspiration for me for the topic, and I hope I did you proud reasonably, and your information was terrific. So thank you, Vicki, and then thank you everyone who's joined today.